I begin with one of my favorite scriptures this time of the year. Indeed, it's one of my favorite scriptures, period. The people that walk in darkness have seen a great light. Those who lived in a land of deep darkness, on them light has shined. I am not sure, in my experience, that this passage has ever meant so much and has been so helpful and inspiring. The pandemic has stripped us of so much this past year, and it continues to do so. The things that are familiar and trusted, the ways we usually relate to others, the way we carry out all sorts of regular functions, the way in which we have the ability to do what we do and need to do to support our families and to take care of work and so forth. All of these, all of a sudden, are severely limited. And this affects our Christmas very much as well. And I gotta say, amidst the frustration, regret, disappointment, we all come together and celebrate Christmas not because of what we've done, and clearly we can't do what we used to do. God comes. O come, Emmanuel. God is with us. Christmas is God's initiative, is God's doing in Jesus Christ. And so we give praise and thanks for another anniversary of the Savior's birth. It is the gift of God, it is the initiative of God in Jesus Christ that we celebrate this day. And so I begin by wishing you all a blessed and joy-filled Christmas season. I have always loved the great Christmas stories, the cartoons, etc., that speak about Christmas. And probably my favorite one is How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and I think I've shared that before. There are many people like Scrooge, that's a very powerful one. And isn't it fascinating how the message of these sorts of stories is that really Christmas is not what we do to bring it about or not bring it about. In the case of the Grinch, the Grinch had a tough life and he had a hard heart. In fact, we don't know for sure why, but because his life was tough and he held a lot of regret and anger perhaps, his heart was really, really weeny. It was small and it was hard. And he just couldn't get Christmas, and it was becoming every year more of a bother, and that was it. He was going to stop Christmas from coming. And so he took all the stuff, all the lights, the toys, the food, everything he thought was associated with Christmas. And even though he took it and was listening for the boo-hoos and cries, it came. The light came into the darkness. And it came into his too, as he struggled and was miffed. How did this happen? Christmas is not about what we do or don't do. It's ultimately about the initiative of God. A couple of quick points in what is supposed to be a shorter homily because of the video feed. Well, it'll just be a little bit shorter, but you tell me later if I lived up to it. Number one, Christmas reminds us of what it truly means to be fully human, fully alive. It is the small, ironically humble, dependent little babe that is the Savior of the world. Who would have thought, the people of Israel never really thought, that the conqueror, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, would be anything unlike a King David or one of the great heroes of the Maccabees. And yet it is a little vulnerable babe that comes into the world through an unknown woman named Mary and a relatively unknown man named Joseph in the place called Nazareth, that the salvation of the world would happen. What does this tell us? One of the great struggles that we always have, it's a great temptation, that if we're going to make change and true growth happen in our world, we need to kind of do it outside. We need to focus on programs. We need to focus on systems. We need to have good ideas. And all of these things are helpful. But the message of Christmas is, O come, Emmanuel. God comes into the midst of our human condition. He comes right within us, not outside of us, and he affects a reform, and even that's an understatement, of our human condition that was bent, that was off, and he shows us what it means to be men and women who love and live in the heart of God. And so, we are reminded every Christmas of what it means to gaze on Jesus and to learn and to reaffirm our humanity, our humanness, that is a gift from God. We had not long ago, a few months ago, as many of you know, a new encyclical from Pope Francis called Fratelli Tutti. And he really addresses the issue of the restoration of humanity in so many ways in this encyclical. One of the ways is the call to cherish human relationship and community. As he says, life exists where there is belonging, communion, fraternity. Life that is stronger than death is built on true relationships and bonds of fidelity. Isn't it ironic that maybe because of a pandemic and its effects on socially isolating us a bit more, that maybe we can appreciate in a greater way the need for human relationship, the need for community, and reaffirm ourselves about what it means to be a Christian community. We hear in Paul's letter to Titus, the grace of God has appeared, bringing salvation to all, training us to renounce impiety and worldly passions, and in the present age to live lives that are self-controlled, upright, godly, while we wait for the blessed hope and the manifestation of the glory of the great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. We can only seek the way of holiness and righteousness, which is a very important call, with God's help. And Jesus Christ, the Savior of the world, who comes at Christmas, shows us what this means. One of the great features, and it's good to reaffirm this, every Christmas is the call to ongoing growth and conversion. I have preached many times before one of my favorite quotes from the St. John Henry Newman: to live is to change, and to live well is to have changed often. And for Newman, change is not just change for change's sake. It's about truly becoming what it means to be fully human, fully alive. Ongoing conversion of life and heart, affected in our baptism and is a part of our lives throughout our existence. Our human history is full of examples of heroism and achievement, but it is also full of examples of bitterness and rivalry and division and even despair. And we've seen that with the pandemic. And so we need to be open to the call to growth and change, so that, if you will, like the Grinch or like Scrooge or like all sorts of people who sometimes have had a hard go, we can't allow hardness of heart to reign in our lives. And this affects absolutely everything. Connected to conversion is the celebration of forgiveness and reconciliation. We can only celebrate Christmas because God is merciful, God is forgiving. And so on this Christmas day, let us give great thanks and praise to God for his forgiveness, which brings about healing. Indeed, the mercy and salvific love of God is the reason for the season, is the reason that Jesus comes into the world. And we hear the Holy Father address this in the same encyclical that he recently released, when he says, those who truly forgive do not forget. Instead, they choose not to yield to the same destructive force that caused them so much suffering. It's been a tough year, Sure, we have lots of reasons to be upset, even angry, but we can't let anger rule the day. We have to gaze on Christ, who shows us what should rule our lives and our day today and always. And it comes about through the little babe who is vulnerable and dependent on his mother and father, his family, to bring love and joy and care for him and the family. Indeed, it is this that is probably a massive clue about what our response should be as well, especially in crises such as a pandemic. Finally, in the encyclical, one last issue I'd love to highlight is the way of gratitude, what he calls the way of gratuitousness, to be grateful versus angry and resentful, of what I don't have, I'm quoting him now, what I cannot do, of the circumstances that we have no control over. Gratuitousness is the ability, as the Pope states, to do some things simply because they are good in themselves, without concern for personal gain or recompense. Gratuitousness makes it possible for us to welcome the stranger, even though this brings no immediate tangible benefit. This year, there's less to distract us, perhaps, from the central message of why Jesus comes to our world. Do we take notice of this? You know, the lights and the presents and the gatherings, all these things are wonderful celebrations, but we can't quite celebrate this year as we've had in the past. In my 59 years, I've never recalled a Christmas quite like this. But maybe this means you and I can take a hard look at Jesus Christ, the babe whose birthday we celebrate every year. He does boldly go where no one has gone before. And this takes him right into the heart and the messiness of our human condition, of our lives, in order to bring love and light. And it is that love and light, the sole initiative of God, that is the reason for this season, and it's why we can exult in hope and joy. And so this is another day, a beautiful day, even in a pandemic. But it is not any day, for this is the day of the Savior's coming to the world. Brothers and sisters, another blessed Christmas season is upon us. May we celebrate this with great joy and hope. And maybe because of the circumstance this year, maybe we can see some things we haven't seen before, of the mystery, of the reason for this season. God comes to us to bring unprecedented joy and hope and renewal. And this is good news and great joy for all the world. Indeed, the people who walked in darkness have seen a great light, and we welcome this light as we need it more than ever in our world today. A blessed Christmas season to you all.